So pardon the pun, but here I go again. This video is kind of a sequel to the last video I just did about 4 minutes ago. This is a video I'm entitling "In Defense of Hair Metal." So, I figured that I'd do this because I just started having all these racing thoughts when I started uploading the last video. So this is kind of meant to be sort of a similar video, but I'm probably, hopefully, not going to ramble on and on like I did in the last one. So basically, when I grew up, I had people around me that were into metal, and namely my brother and his friends. And some of those people, you know, liked kind of a variety of different stuff. My brother, for one, rest in peace, he liked a lot of stuff, you know. He liked Guns N' Roses, Led Zeppelin, Metallica, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Queensryche, you know. Later got into Jane's Addiction, Chili Peppers, and stuff like that. I remember him having the first Pearl Jam album and Alice in Chains and stuff too. So, you know, it was kind of a situation where there was a lot of variety. One type of music that he was kind of mixed on, but he still liked, was hair metal. So, in the late 80s and the early 90s, the hair metal thing was kind of just so huge. You just really didn't know, you know, what was gonna happen with all these bands, because there were just so fucking many of them. So as far as where my taste went with that stuff, I think I was into Great White for like a week, and then I stopped liking them, and I really did not like a lot of hair metal after that, if you want to count them as hair metal. So most of it I really didn't like at all growing up, and, you know, throughout my whole musical liking. But something happened a couple years ago, and this is really a gradual process, basically. This happened really a way long time ago, probably more like 10 years ago or more, where I started like the Scorpions. And basically the reason why I liked the Scorpions is I was getting into Yngwie Malmsteen and all these other guys, and I always like to get to the source of everything, you know, where stuff starts and what begins everything. I always like to know that. I think it's kind of neat. A lot of people, you know, in the metal scene don't give a fuck. You know, they just like, oh, that's fag shit, man. Don't listen to that. Ugh. Even if it's something that sounds halfway to what they're listening to anyways. That's another reason why I'm just kind of fucking fed up with a lot of the metal scene nowadays in some ways. It's people have that attitude. Not all of them. You know, not a huge, maybe not even a majority, but a lot of people do have that attitude. So I got into the Scorpions, and then I started getting into the 80s Scorpions. It kind of just grew on me. I wasn't expecting, because I got into Uli John Roth, namely, from the 70s, and I got, you know, I was already into some 70s stuff like Priest, so it was just kind of a logical extension of that. So I started to, even though I liked Kiss when I was younger, and I'm going to do some videos about them too coming up, not today, but later on. I started to kind of relate to, you know, some of the lyrics about sex and, you know, dating and relationships or whatever, because I actually, for the first time in my life, I actually dated. And, you know, so I mean, I don't know, it was kind of one of those things that I kind of, you know, I was able to relate to it, and I liked some of the lyrics. You know, some of them were cheesy as hell, the Scorpions. And then after that, I got into Dokken and George Lynch, and, you know, it was kind of softening me up for grooming me for liking hair metal, basically, those two bands. So I started to like that stuff, and I just thought it was just good and heavy metal, you know. With regards to Dokken, I thought the rhythmic side was kind of undeveloped, but I like George Lynch and stuff and the melodies and stuff. But that's kind of a bash on Dokken a little bit. But then I was kind of resigned to those two bands, you know, and all that stuff. But the last couple of years, the last 3 or 4 years or whatever, I kind of discovered that some of these bands from the 80s and the whole hair metal scene were actually pretty damn good. And time has passed, and you look back in the past, and maybe at one point in time it was funny to say that you liked something like Whitesnake or something, but basically it's just like so much time had passed that it was almost like it didn't really matter anymore. It's like, well, it's so old now. And this happens to a lot of stuff. It's like, it's so old now, it's just like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's kind of like what happened to Iron Maiden, in the early 2000s, basically, like, oh, it's this fucking seen as this cheesy ass 80s band that nobody liked anymore, to like, oh, it's classic, man. It's classic. And it kind of pissed me off because it was like, I was flying their flag all throughout, but it's like, that's just what happened. So with regards to some of this stuff, I discovered John Sykes as a guitar player, and that was kind of the icing or the sealing the deal for me and some of the hair metal stuff, because I think by far he's one of the best guitarists I've heard or I was influenced by. I got 1987 by Whitesnake, and I was blown away. It blew my mind because just some of the leads and some of the melodies and stuff. And I was already into David Coverdale with Deep Purple. I really like the Burn album. It's probably my favorite Deep Purple album, other than, I think In Rock is maybe second. But I really like Burn a lot. Glenn Hughes is a great vocalist too, but David Coverdale, I really liked him. So I was like, hey, it's just basically, maybe there's some cheesy 80s keyboards and production, but here and there. But it's basically just like fucking... it's just like Deep Purple, kind of, because it's like you have, classic shred guitarists with David Coverdale's lyrics and melodies and stuff. It's like, well, there's not much of a difference there is, but it's like, so I got into that, and I kind of related to it at the time because I related to the lyrics because I was living the lyrics more. At that point in time, that was really kind of where I was, So I kind of started to open my mind up to hair metal and some of the older bands, Rat is all right. We're all right, whatever. They have some good stuff. I can't really get through a whole album by them, but, the guitar playing in these bands is just phenomenal. Some of it's just, it's just, it's shred, whatever, it's bluesy. I know people are going to say, like, well, it's not progressive. It's not like Petrucci or Romeo or fucking Ron Jarzombek, who I like all three of them. But it's like, yeah, well, I like some ballsy, bluesy, soulful, melodic shit sometimes, And some of them were super shredders, Fucking, Mr. Big, I'm not a big fan, but Paul Gilbert's a big time fucking shredder. I like Racer X, but it was kind of there was some really cool shit. And a lot of it's about girls and sex, and you may want to call it sexist or whatever, but it's like, well, my brother once told me, it's like, yeah, when you get older, you're going to relate to some of those lyrics more. I'm like, I guess you're right. He was right. It's like, yeah, Iron Maiden's still my favorite band, but, obviously he said he didn't relate to the lyrics, because it was all about Ancient Mariners and Alexander the Great and fucking Flash of the Blade, the Duelists, shit like that. Children of the Damned or whatever, The Prisoner, Iron Maiden lyrics are about all that stuff. But, and Judas Priest was more gay and innuendos. That's a little different, and especially for my brother, who was kind of a little bit on the bigoted side at times. But the thing is with the hair metal thing, I'm really selective about it, but there's a lot of stuff that's really good. It's really catchy. It's really melodic. I just can't resist it. Excuse me for liking some of this stuff nowadays. I just recently got into this band, Icon. They have this album called Night of the Crime. It's from 1985. Yeah, 30 fucking years ago, of course. And I can't stop listening to it. I think it's awesome. I think it's just it has some great melodies, and you know the lyrics are all right, but you know the melodies and the licks, the music, it's just they don't really make it like that anymore. They don't bands don't come around. If they did do it now, it would be cheesy. That's another thing why a reason why I don't like Steel Panther that much is because it's like they still sound kind of modern. They don't really take it as far as they could with the music. And I don't mind them, but I just think that they could have taken a little further into that retro sound even more. Like the band from Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Love Fist. That band, I mean, it wasn't really a band; it was a project for a video game. But that sounds like something that could come out in 1985 or 86. That really, I think, if they did a full album, it would blow fucking Steel Panther away. I mean, it's hilarious. It's a joke. It's comedy, but it's fucking. That nailed it to me. You know, Dangerous Bastard and Love Fist Fury. I think it's fucking awesome. And then, yeah, I just, you know, I started to get into some of those lyrics. And with one of my bands, Midi Warlord, also known as Axed, you know, there's some lyrics that are kind of raunchy. And I kind of get into those lyrics. And that's why I started writing them, partly because I got into more hair metal stuff. Because some lyrics like Slide It In or whatever, Spit It Out, or you know, some of the G.G. Allin stuff I got into, which kind of influenced that too. But you know, it's just I don't think that there's anything wrong with talking about sex or having fun. It's like, yeah, back then it was so ubiquitous across the spectrum that it was hard to listen to. I'm gonna turn this mic around. The sun's kind of getting in there. I mean, it was hard to listen to this stuff because, you know, obviously oh, it's even worse. What the fuck? It was hard to listen to because of the fact that there was like a lot of let me move over here. A lot of stuff that was kind of you know, it was all a lot of it was the same, or it was these rip off bands. Like even that Icon band, they had this guy on their third album, I think it was, that was like a David Coverdale, literally a ripoff. Like he dressed like him and he posed like him. It's really funny. You should, I mean, anybody watching this should check it up on YouTube. YouTube, the third Icon album. It's ICON. It was not the rapper, not the EDM group or whatever, or EBM or whatever the fuck. It was pretty funny. But yeah, you had a lot of rip-off bands. You had a lot of just way too much, you know, oversaturation is the word, probably a better word to use. So it was oversaturated. But now, you know, some of the stuff is valuable, just as for the guitar playing or for the melodies or for the, you know, some of the stuff and some of the lyrics I identify with because I've lived it, you know, some of the time, you know, not all the time. It would be great all the time, but you know, some of the time I do live it. And people criticize hair metal, and it's, you know, whatever, sexually driven or about relationships or whatever. Yeah, I used to not relate to that, but you know, all the metal diehards that used to bash it, you know, it's like, well, really to bash these guys that probably got laid way more than the thrash bands like put together. You know, as bad as that sounds, as controversial as that statement is, you know, they probably got way more action than any of those guys fucking put together, you know. And they used to, I mean, I know these guys used to criticize them because it was just so oversaturated. I don't blame them, you know. I don't blame James Hetfield for having a dartboard with Bon Jovi on it and stuff like that back in the day. But now it just seems like there's something about it. There's a magic that's lost with a lot of modern music that the hair metal some of the hair metal bands had, and I still to this day don't like Poison and I don't like Winger. Bon Jovi is a mixed bag because I like some of their songs a lot, and then some other songs are just kind of whatever. Whitesnake is my favorite. I like a lot of their earlier blues rock stuff, like from the late 70s, early 80s as well, you know, because they really weren't a hair metal band until they started dressing that way after the recording of 1987. I mean, that's really when they became a hair metal band. I wouldn't even consider 1987, which is the self-titled one or whatever, hair metal per se. I mean, it's kind of heavy, you know. Some of it's, and the first two Motley Crue albums, it's just heavy metal. You know, it's not anything. I I don't know, glam metal. They were influenced by glam rock, and you can hear like not the Raspberries. What was the band? Some of those bands from the '70s. You can hear them in Motley Crue. You know, even maybe the New York Dolls or whatever. But and they actually do have some of those. They did a cover like Sweet or one of those bands, Slade. You know, they bands that did those covers. That was an influence. Some of those actual glam rock bands. So like a lot of people say, oh, glam and glam metal are different, but actually there's a lot of stuff that kind of converges. So this is kind of just a defense of hair metal. I like some of the lyrics. I like some of the songs. I didn't back in the day because I was prejudiced against it. And really, it was probably a better time to be against it back in the day than it is now. Because it's way better than fucking most of the rap stuff that's out now. Or mainstream rap, at least. And mainstream pop and mainstream rock is just, you know, it's become so shitty compared to even back then. I mean, you listen to, I don't know, a fucking Breaking Benjamin song compared to fucking, hell, even Trickster is probably more entertaining than that. I don't know. I mean, it's ridiculous that, you know, or Europe, you know, the band Europe, they had some great songs, you know, great melodies. And that's really what I like about music a lot of the time is melody, you know. And it doesn't have to be some type of fucking super like inverted, you know, super complex inversions for me to like it. Just because I do like a lot of prog stuff, it can be simple. I mean, that's fine. And it just has a lot of the guitar had taste to it. It had this feel to it, you know. Whether you're listening to John Sykes, Jake E. Lee, or you know, Nuno from Extreme. I'm not really a big Extreme fan, but I'm talking about like a lot of the different guitarists, you know. And just there was actually quite a variety of stuff too. I mean, but you know, as with any genre of music or metal or whatever, if you want to call it metal, a lot of people consider it hard rock. As with anything, it died because it got to be too much, and it probably deserved to die, you know. But I like some of it. I've liked it probably more in the last couple of years than ever. If you really want to call it hair metal, you know, my favorite two are probably Whitesnake and Kiss. If you want to, I don't consider Kiss hair metal, but I like a lot of their '80s stuff, so I guess that would be hair metal. So, in summation, I guess, to this video, which is well more organized than the last one because I had to really get in my flow state to get this kind of thing going. People may criticize hair metal, and to this day, a lot of hardcore metal fans probably hate it, but they really have to just take a step in those shoes where, you know, there's these catchy melodies and there's these feelings that are involved with it. It's like, you know, you listen to the party thing, you know, the whole partying thing with metal or with that kind of metal or rock or whatever. That's really not in a lot of the stuff, you know. Sometimes, and I really didn't understand it until I started really getting into Priest, and it never progressed beyond that up until, you know, way later that I started to hear stuff about partying, quote unquote, you know, just having fun, you know, driving fast or fucking doing drugs, even though I don't really do any drugs, you know, or drinking or having sex with some strange girl from wherever, you know. There's this danger to a lot of it, you know. There's this bad boy, badass kind of shit to hair metal, or even sleaze metal if you count like Guns N' Roses or Junkyard or like Faster Pussycat or whatever. You know, there's this badass thing, this attitude, this cockiness that, you know, I didn't understand back in the day because I was this fucking sensitive, you know, semi-autistic piece of shit growing up, you know. I was butthurt about everything. Obviously, I'm butthurt about power metal. People that bash power metal, obviously, with my last video, but I don't give a fuck. Whatever. So that's what the video is about. This video is about. Hair metal, I grew to love a lot of it, and I make no apologies for it.